In today's episode, school expelled me for mom's anger. We sued the county and caused a reform. I unleashed the monster of bureaucracy upon my neighbor and watched it destroy him. Affair partner gets dirty, illegal, Linens aired loses job as financial planner. So let's get started. School expelled me for mom's anger. We sued the county and caused a reform. Not sure if this fits this sub, but felt like posting my story. I have no issue with removing it if it doesn't quite meet the standard. So I have a really bad leg, I've had 13 surgeries, long story, and had just started at a new school. After the first 3 weeks, I had to go in for another procedure on my leg. Not that big a deal to me, I've been here before. Upon my return I had documentation of my restrictions, as well as special amenities that were required. The big three were that I needed extra time to get from class to class, must have someone to escort me, and needed unrestricted access to the elevator. All of these got me recurring problems such as constant harassment by teachers and security about my being in the halls during class time, and why was my cousin out too? He was filling the role as my escort, as I have anxiety problems, and we had the same classes. These first two were annoying, but easy enough to deal with. The real issue was the elevator, as I was told multiple times that for security issues I couldn't have a personal key due to it sharing the same functionality with the interior door keys. I would never have had any issues with this, as I was told there would always be someone on the same floor as my classes to open the elevator for me. This, of course, was untrue about 75% of the time. The lack of elevator access meant that I was always stuck in the halls when other students were going class to class, and was consistently late due to having to wait for someone to come by and open the door for the elevator. This also meant that I would sometimes be stuck waiting through the entire lunch period, and due to my absences couldn't afford to simply go to lunch after the fact. After about 3 weeks of this, I was tired of not getting to eat lunch. So I did one of the stupidest things I could have attempted and tried to use the stairs. For context, I was not on crutches, I was on a full-blown walker. About halfway down to the landing, I fell hard. As lunch was letting out, one of my friends found me, got someone to help pick me up, and carried me to the office. Another of my friends went to find my other cousin. The one who normally escorted me wasn't there due to being sick, so I was without escort because I couldn't bear the though of gasp a stranger escorting me, who when getting to the office managed to get me to calm down enough to give them my mother's number. Now, my mother is quite hot-tempered, but can keep a level head normally. When she heard I fell, she was there in record time. When she got there, she immediately asked what happened. I told her I didn't want to miss lunch again, so I tried to use the stairs. Big mistake, as that set off a Tsar Bomba-sized explosive. She immediately turned around and demanded for the principal and VP to get their asses in here ASAP. As soon as the principal and VP walked in, she started berating them in a fashion not suitable for most adults to hear, let alone kids. When the VP made an offhand remark about my condition, my mother was swarmed by local sheriffs that provided security for the school's entrances and office as she physically went after the VP. We were escorted out, and after looking at the file and realizing my cousin and I had the same address, they figured out that I didn't actually live there. Now, my grandmother's address was listed as she looked after me after I left school up until around 8 p.m. She also was raising my cousin after an issue between her and my aunt. They used this as grounds to expel me, and told her I can be some other school's problem now. I was then enrolled at the school near my house, and had to have yet another surgery to repair the damage that was done as a result of my fall, and redo the work of the previous procedure. I had gotten multiple statements from teachers as well as my doctors, and my parents were moving forward with a lawsuit naming the VP principal and the county school board. We were contacted by a lawyer who had won multiple cases against our school board, some of which went to the state Supreme Court, and he told us he would take our case pro bono. He was getting tired of going against the board, and though a case like this would be what it took to try and fix their shit. Fast forward 9 months, and I was walking out of court with a settlement to cover all my procedures, as well as a written confirmation that the school would be going through a complete administrative overhaul, and that the principal and VP would be let go, and have their administrative credentials revoked in our state. My new school was let know day one my medical requirements, and my need for a personal elevator key by the superintendent and the head of the State Board of Education. Long story short, school majorly F***ed up with handling my medical requirements, resulting in a lawsuit that cost the head administrators their jobs, as well as a full-blown county-wide investigation of disability procedures. I unleashed the monster of bureaucracy upon my neighbor and watched it destroy him. This is a story of how patience is key and how letting someone else get revenge for you is by far easier than doing it yourself. The setup. I live in one of those doubled-up houses where they build two houses adjacent to each other with mirrored layout, so we share a wall but are otherwise completely separate. For years, the house next to me belonged to a nice old lady who you never really noticed or had any trouble with. When she died and the house was resold, the troubles began. The target is someone who I will refer to as Jack Sparrow for reasons that will become clear later. Jack owns a sizable construction business, does some real estate on the side. He buys the house and rents it to a bunch of foreign construction workers that work for his business. I say foreign because it is relevant to the story. There are rumors Jack is doing some shady stuff to have these work for him dirt cheap, by claiming that they're national workers in their native country, and paying them according to that wage and not the much higher minimum wage of my country. Not exactly on the up and up. Possibly unreported labor as well. Anyways, he stuffs 4 to 6 of these in said house for them to live while they work here. Now I do not have anything against foreign construction workers. But these guys living next door have two traits that are very problematic. They are extremely loud, and they do not give AF***ck about anyone else. We're talking non-stop music and partying starting Thursday evening throughout the entire weekend, until they leave at 5 a.m. Monday morning to go to work. Seriously, I don't know how or when they sleep, it is literally non-stop. We're talking I'm wearing headphones, but still cannot hear my own sound over their music loud, since it would appear that they've designated the living room, adjacent to the shared wall, as the party room where the fun happens. At first, I do the neighborly thing and just suck it up, thinking it's just one party, just one weekend. After the third one in a row, I go over to ask them to turn it down, since night disturbance, it's technically illegal to blast music this loud, hearable on the street and across the street by my other neighbors who have also complained. I'm met with a half-hearted "so sorry, we'll fix." Except nothing changes. I go over several more times, each time angrier, each time met with "but it's not loud. If I can hear your music in my own house, over my own TV and music, I would say that it is in fact too loud." I contact Jack, since he is their landlord, and explain the situation, after which I'm met with an abrupt "sorry, not my F***king problem." Basically Jack told me to get fucked. So I involve police, and call them every time things get out of hand. After about a dozen calls, sometimes even twice in the same night, it is clear that even regular police interference doesn't help the situation. I should mention that I am a lawyer, so I know what the next legal steps are. I also know that other than a token paper from a judge saying their music is too loud, I'm not really going to get anything. Things would, like they already sometimes had, become a cat and mouse game where they would blast their music extremely loud to piss me off or to wake me up for a few brief moments, so that by the time I could get proof or police show up, there would be no music. I'm deadlocked with my only further option being pretty useless and a waste of time. At this point I'm biding my time and just waiting till something changes. I'm not saying that I condone people who bludgeon their neighbor to death with a rusty pipe, but I do somewhat understand what would drive someone to that point. The mistake. One day I'm at home, and I notice quite a lot of ruckus next door, more so than usual. Suddenly, I see through my garden window that a wall is being partially torn down. You see, sometime over the years, the neighbors had built a small adjacent side building adjoining the main house. It was right on the border between us, and when the gardens were being re-fenced, the wall was used as a divider to save on fencing. Said wall was now in the process of having its top part ripped off by a crane. I was not informed of any of this, which, while not technically needed, would have been the nice thing to do. I go take a walk so I can take a look at what we're doing and see that they've torn down the entire side building. The remaining wall between our gardens is the only part that has been kept intact, and even then, not the top part. Being a lawyer, and specifically, a construction/permit lawyer, I know two things. Shit like this is not allowed without a pre-approved permit from the city. There is no way in hell they have said permit, as I would have seen the application for it. I regularly have to check the online, public, accessible by everyone, application to see what permits are being applied for my job, and when I do I tend to look over to my own area, just so I can keep up with what is being planned in my area. This is it. The moment I have been waiting for, the situation has changed and the time has come to exact revenge. A quick email sent to the municipal authorities lets me do my civic duty of reporting a potential crime, the fact that someone is building or demolishing shit without a permit. Since this is a simple report, no response happens since I'm not an official victim or anything yet. Since no further construction happens for a few days and everything was removed, I assume that was that, and they would only tear down the side structure since it was starting to fall apart due to age. Neighbors have moved all their stuff that was in said building onto their lawn and haphazardly covered it with a tarp. The next week, more construction materials are being delivered and construction starts. I send a new email to City Services with new pictures saying that apparently there is more planned and that I hope they undertake the appropriate action. Instant response less than an hour later, they'd called Jack after the first time to inform him that what he was doing required a permit, and he had assured them that he didn't know that, BS, he's in construction, of course he knows, and that he would stop construction and request a permit. They called him again after my email, reprimanded him for not following his earlier promise, and he said again he would shut it down. I happened to be working from home that day, and had to stop myself from waving to the construction crew as they left. Later that day I get an angry phone call from Jack, who accuses me of reporting him, and that I would be sorry, he would come after me for damages for his delays. I respectfully inform him that even if I reported him, reports are in my name, but not published and anonymized in later files. I wouldn't have done anything wrong, because from the looks of it he didn't have a permit and should have known that before he started working illegally without one. I end the call before I start to sound too happy with things. Jack has at this point no idea what I have initiated with this. He is Jack Sparrow and I have just rung the bell that awakens the Kraken that will destroy him, he just doesn't know it yet. The Kraken. You see, there is a good reason why most people consult an expert and/or a lawyer when they want to apply for a permit. The rules involved are so convoluted and needlessly complex that navigating them as a non-professional is extremely hard and time-consuming, and a single mistake can torpedo your entire case, forcing you to do it all over. I have killed entire projects, and have seen clients' projects killed, by pointing out that on page 127, section 35-1A, something was left blank that should have been answered. I did some digging and found out that the previous owners of the houses had actually consulted each other about the side building and agreed on making the wall part of the divider between their gardens. So much so that they shared the costs of it. And the ownership. That wall that he destroyed part of? It was also my wall. Which of course means I'm entitled to damages, but that is not the important part. The important part is that he needs my permission to do anything to that wall. So when he applied for a permit a few weeks later, added bonus, rowdy neighbors stuff is still out in the open, covered by just a tarp. Since they expected this to be a quick smash and replace job that would take a few weeks at most, I went to City Center and looked at the application. Noticed that they were planning to do some stuff to said wall that I owned 50%. So I filed a complaint, following proper procedure, about the permit, namely that even if granted, it could never be executed, since Jack needed permission from me in regards to the wall, and he didn't have it, nor was I intending to grant it. This should kill his permit, since permits cannot be granted if you know in advance they cannot be realized. No sense granting a permit to build a certain kind of house when you know they're never actually going to build it. Now, Jack was a bit of a smooth talker, and as a construction entrepreneur, had his connections, and permits are a political decision here just as much as a legal one. So despite a 100% correct legal objection that should have killed his permit, it went through. He actually called me about it to gloat a little. No worry, one can appeal a permit in my country. The only requirement is that you pay a €100 fee, which I gladly paid. The appeal instance is a subnational instance, and does not care one bit about Jack's political ties or the half-hearted bullshit that the city officials wrote to justify granting the permit in spite of the concerns I raised. They terminate his permit without any hesitation on the aforementioned legal grounds. Jack sees his permit blocked until he fixes the issue, which he can't, because I'm not really inclined to agree with his plans for our wall, you see. At this point, going through 2 lengthy procedures, it has been over 7 months. The neighbors have had an unfinished construction project in their yard the entire time, forced to store their stuff elsewhere. Something that was always supposed to be a temporary thing for a few weeks while we build turned into something that was taking months, with no end in sight. But wait, there's more. The above was the administrative part of the matter, him getting the permit. Now doing construction work without a permit is also a criminal offense. And of course, my report got passed around to the appropriate instances, so now Jack was also the subject of a criminal procedure for construction offense. Not only did he risk fines and jail time, he was a construction business, and used his own construction business for the work he did on the property. So his company was also on the hook, and one of the sentences that can be given in these types of crimes is to be prohibited to do construction or construction-related activity as a business, either permanently or temporarily. Not only was he personally on the line, his entire business was as well. During this debacle, Jack tried to sell the property. This didn't really go too well because of a few reasons. 1. The property was inflicted with an illegal situation. The demolished side building was torn down illegally, and until said illegal status was resolved, it would stick to the property. Which tends to kill the property value quite a bit, since nobody wants to buy something that they'll have to spend time and money on to make legal again by either rebuilding the torn down building, or getting a regularization permit for it. Made even worse by the fact that he applied for said permit and had it denied, so he couldn't even claim that said permit would be super easy to get. Secondly, Jack never intended to sell the property in its current state. What he, as I now know, has done in the past is buy cheap old houses like the one next to me. He put some of his crew in it, who can't complain about the subpar accommodation. They thrash the place because they don't care, and he lets them. Then when the place is done, he tears it down and sells it to a developer or develops it himself. However, due to his construction crime and the accompanying status for the property, step 2 was not an option. He couldn't renovate it the way it needed to be. Small renovations would not be enough, because covering the crime was always a requirement in any permit he would request for the building, and because of me, he couldn't cover it. Couldn't sell it either, because the place was trashed, and any developer looking at it would dip out when they realized there was a construction issue, and a vocal neighbor who would oppose anything big that they would try to do there. Lost of easier properties to develop than that one. In conclusion. Anyway, that is where we are today. Jack is staring down the barrel of a criminal court procedure that is about to happen, where he is risking his business and livelihood. His existing projects also gather special attention from city services now, since he is now outed to them as someone who cuts corners on permits and regulations. He cannot really sell the property unless he cuts a massive loss, since in its current state it is absolutely trashed. He cannot develop it or sell to a developer because all development plans involve the adjoining wall, which he cannot use in big ways unless he gets my permission. The rowdy neighbors are stuck living in a smaller house than what they had, in a place they trashed, but that cannot really be renovated or fixed in the major way that it needs. They have quieted down a lot, possibly because Jack blames them for his current situation, which isn't wrong, I suppose. I have awakened the Kraken and set it off on Jack Sparrow, and it utterly ruined him. And the best part is that I had due to very little to do it. All I really did was nudge the abomination that is municipal bureaucracy and point it in his direction, and they did the rest. I could tell you that he called me to complain, and even beg about letting him use the wall the way he needs it to, so that he can get on with his business and fix the issues, and use them to show his good faith in court in the criminal procedure, that he was losing money and customers over this, and was in danger of losing his entire business, and that I then smugly replied with not my F***ing problem. But he didn't, so for now we'll just have to imagine that he did. Affair partner gets dirty, illegal, linens aired loses job as financial planner. Throwaway account. Note 1 names, characters, and places are changed for privacy reasons. Note 2 trigger warning, this revenge story involves gaslighting and infidelity. Names. Matt, edit, me for clarity 39-year gay male with lupus. George, partner of 13 years is a year older at 40. John, 33-year-old affair partner. Financial advisor. Background: a bit of backstory. Partner and I were monogamous for 10 years. Sure, we had an occasional threesome before that. But nothing long-term. I know I am potentially going to get a few people who will say that's where it all started. The understanding was that we would not do anything behind the other's back. And whomever we brought into the relationship would be an equal in the relationship. We wanted to have our couple evolve into a throuple. Needless to say, it didn't work out. We tried, and basically the last person we tried to court ended up gaslighting me and playing the victim with George. Admittedly, I wasn't bringing my best self to the relationship. 2 people who basically raised me died, and I was in mourning. And I was focused on the rest of my family whom I love dearly. Partner uses my lupus and choosing to spend time with family as his justification for cheating and lying to me about it. D-Day, spread over a few days before COVID lockdowns. In March, my partner had told me he wanted some time apart. I initially agree, but then things just didn't seem right. I thought we were fine relationship-wise. But something seemed amiss. I have my own place, and I give him some space. D-Day one Sunday, he tells me he has a spa session, legit massage, that evening, and that he would be busy and wouldn't be able to meet till late for dinner. I didn't think anything was going on behind my back. He said he would call when he was done and not to wait for me for dinner. We were still having meals together since it's something we were so used to doing together. I needed some notebook I had left at his place, and thinking he was having his spa session, I let myself into his place. Lo and behold, he's having dinner with the John. I leave and he assures me that he's just having dinner with a friend and that his spa session got rescheduled. I asked, point blank, if anything was going on between them, and he said no. D-Day 2 Wednesday, I'm just a complete wreck. I don't know what's going on, I don't know what's true and what's real anymore, and I get the gut feel that there's more to George and John than George is letting me in on. I do some sleuthing and find out that they're friends on Facebook, but not on Instagram. Curious, no? Yet they've been liking each other's posts on Instagram. I remember George logging into my iPad, so I go on and check for any message history. And wouldn't you know, I see exchanges between them going on for months. Once again, I ask George who is this person whom he's friends with on Facebook, but not on Instagram, and why are their interactions so bizarre? George tells me he's just a friend, nothing more, and that I'm crazy. My blood must have been boiling at this point. I then remind him that he's still logged into my iPad and his face just changes. He tells me that I betrayed his trust, and that I really shouldn't have done that. He must have been in full-blown panic mode. In their messages, I find out that they've been seeing each other since September 2019. I had an emergency appendectomy in October 2019. Turns out what I thought was indigestion was actually chronic appendicitis, and it had finally ruptured, and the very next day, while I was recovering in the hospital, George and John went out for dinner, and John stayed over after. No prizes for guessing what happened that night. They're talking about me in their conversations, and they even arranged to meet on Monday, after D-Day 1. John asked if I would show up again, and George said that I wouldn't. At this point, my whole life before just felt like one big fat lie. I'm having plenty of sleepless nights, thinking about how I'm the chump they were fooling for 5 months. I was none the wiser. Furious, I engaged Revenge for Hire service. I wasn't thinking clearly and caveat emptor, I lucked out with a service that did a good job. I gave them all the information about John the First had, not much, just his social media accounts, and they did some investigative work. They dug up quite a bit of dirt on him. Turns out, John was in a relationship as well. Inform the partner? Check. George wasn't the only person John was cheating with. They managed to find some chat history of his hookups all the way to 2017. What's most interesting is that John enjoyed using illicit drugs while having these trysts, complete with contact information of parties involved and locations where it happened. They dug deeper and found conversations where he would advise friends to commit insurance fraud. Nothing major, mind you, but well, fraud is still fraud. And from the conversations, it seems that the insurers did pay out for bogus travel delays. The revenge agency then asks me how I would like to proceed with the information. I told them, I just want his life ruined. My life and relationship have been ruined, why not share a little the pain I was feeling? The agency said that they had informed all parties involved. Last I heard, his insurance agencies dropped him, on the basis of encouraging insurance fraud, and he has a criminal record for drug use. And now that he has a criminal record means he can no longer travel to Canada or Japan, countries he loves to visit. His family knows that he's been cheating and using drugs. And his partner knows he's been king around, without protection and without prep. Thanks for watching.